The warhammer came from below, not above. Rhaegar saw it at the last instant, an arc of dull iron rising from the churning water, heavy as a falling star. Robert cried out something, words lost to the roar of men and river, but the prince's body knew before his mind did. He twisted his shoulders, dragged his shield down, felt the shock of impact shudder up from his arm into his teeth. The blow ripped the shield from his fingers, smashed the air from his lungs, sent his horse lurching sideways. The trident swallowed them both. Cold green water closed over his head. Sound became a muffled thunder. His armor dragged at him, the weight of steel and rubies, a drowning crown. Rhaegar's lungs burned. His hands clawed for purchase and found only weed and silt. The river had him, filling his ears, his nose, pressing in with indifferent strength. This is how Targaryens end, he thought through the haze. Not in dragonfire. In mud, something seized his collar. For an instant he thought it the river again, stronger. But then he felt the wrench of a mailed grip and the surge upwards. His head broke the surface. Air knifed into his chest. He coughed out water, blinked stinging eyes. Above him the world was chaos. Horses screamed. Men shouted. Steel rang on steel. The river ran red in places. The sky overhead was a torn, dirty gray. He tasted blood and mud and bitter iron. "Your Grace," a voice at his ear, strained and breathless. "Take hold of me, now." He knew that voice. "Arthur." The word came out as a rasp. Ser Arthur Dayne had both hands hooked beneath the rim of Rhaegar's cuirass, boots braced against the riverbed. His white cloak was drenched and fouled, clinging to him like seaweed. "Hold fast." He dragged him sideways beneath the surface again, along the shallows, away from the clash of hooves. Rhaegar's body protested every movement. The impact of Robert's warhammer had left his ribs a sharp, jagged ache. Each breath was a knife. His mind flickered in and out, seizing on stray images. Robert's face in the moment before they closed, beard matted, eyes wild, stag helm splashed with gore. The sound of the first impact against his breastplate, like gods pounding at a door, the river opening below. They rose again in the shadow of broken reeds, farther down the ford where the current slackened. Men thundered past without seeing them. A drowned knight in crimson plate bumped against Rhaegar's shoulder, eyes staring at nothing through a visor filled with water. Rubies winked from the man's gorget, dark as thickened blood. He realized dimly that many of his stones had been torn free. They spun in the water around him, small hard glints, carried away toward the sea. "Can you stand?" Arthur demanded. Rhaegar tried. His legs felt distant. He pushed anyway, fury and stubbornness lifting him. Half-kneeled in the shallows, choking, one hand on Arthur's arm. "Robert, where is Robert?" Across the ford, the rebel host was driving his banners back. The crowned stag of Baratheon surged forward beside the leaping trout of Tully and the gray dire wolf of Stark, grinding the last splashes of royal scarlet into the mud. The prince's household guard were scattered or dead, their white cloaks marred by river filth and blood. He saw Lord John Connington's banner falling, trampled underfoot, and something cold took root beneath his bruised ribs. He had lost the crossing. "Your Grace," Arthur said, low and urgent. "We must go." He looked up to his friend, the sword of the morning, the man who had ridden at his side since they were boys. Arthur's face, usually calm as smooth stone, was drawn tight. "Arthur," Rhaegar managed, "I must find Robert. End this." "You cannot lift a sword," Arthur said, and there was no pity in it, only fact. "He thinks you dead. Let him." Rhaegar blinked. Through the haze of pain and river water, the notion seemed absurd. "Dead? I saw you fall beneath the blow." Another voice, from behind. Oswell went loomed up, dragging a riderless horse by the reins. His helm was dented, his shoulders soaked in crimson. So did half the field. The usurper roared and crashed on, his men with him. "They rode past us. They thought you gone." He twisted his head to spit pink froth in the river. Let that lie buy us a little time, your grace, I beg you. Your grace, there was no king here, only a beaten prince in a river. The ford is lost, Arthur said. The men are routed. If we stay, you die. If you die, the line ends with mad Ares and a child across the sea. Viserys, Rhaegar whispered, his thoughts snagging on his little brother, frightened in the Red Keep, his silver hair tangled. And my children. He thought then of Rhaenys clambering over his lap, demanding tales of knights, and baby Aegon reaching for his hair with plump, uncertain fingers. He had meant to win them a safer world. He had meant. A horse screamed nearby, cut off by a brutal impact. Someone shouted, "Robert!" in triumph or terror. He could not tell which. The smell of blood was thick as wool. "Come, my prince," Arthur said softly. "Live first, then remember honor." Oswell pushed the horse forward until its chest was in the river. Arthur heaved Rhaegar bodily across the saddle. Pain flared from his ribs like lightning. The field went black for a heartbeat. When his vision cleared, he was slumped over the horse's neck. Fingers knotted in its wet mane. "Where?" he croaked. "South," Arthur said. "To the tower. Lyanna." The name spoke itself inside him, clear even through the din. For an instant, the battlefield receded, replaced by gray eyes full of defiance and a laugh like breaking ice. He had left her in that lonely place with his best men, sworn to protect her and the babe that grew inside her. He had promised he would end this war and return before the child drew breath. He had failed the first part. Ash. He would not fail the second. "Go!" Rhaegar's good hand tightened on the reins. "Get us clear," Arthur signaled to Oswell. The Kingsguard closed in, whitish cloaks streaming brown in the river, and together they pushed through reeds and shallows, angling downriver where scrubby trees hid their retreat. Behind them, the Trident roared and raged, uncaring. The prince did not look back. He was not sure when he slept and when he woke on the long ride south. The days bled together, marked only by pain. The blow from Robert's warhammer had not broken the plate. Arthur claimed that was what had kept him alive, but it had caved one side near the ribs and driven metal into the flesh beneath. Every jolt of the horse drove a spike into him. At some point, Oswell talked Arthur into letting him pry the breastplate away with a dagger and borrowed hammer. Rhaegar remembered shouting, or thought he did. He remembered the sour stink of his own blood. They changed horses often, stealing fresh mounts from terrified crofters or small holdfasts whose lords were away at war. Arthur rode ahead, white cloak cut short at the knee to keep from tangling, Dawn strapped across his back wrapped in rough cloth. Oswell guarded the rear, grim and silent, eyes always on the horizon. Once, in a half-abandoned village, they came upon a man in maester's gray crossing a muddy yard with a satchel. Arthur caught him by the sleeve and drew him into a shed. When they emerged, the maester had eyes like saucers, while Arthur's hands were sticky with herbs. He stood over Rhaegar with a steaming cup. "Drink. What is it?" Rhaegar asked, though he already knew. "Pain will slow you," Arthur said. "This will slow you less." It slowed his thoughts, too, but he drank because the alternative was screaming. The world narrowed to miles and miles of raw countryside and the sound of hooves. They avoided roads where they could, slipping through scrub and low woods. The rebels were all to the north and west, Arthur said. The south remained quiet for now. There were no dragon banners on the road either, though. When Oswell caught a glimpse of gold and red on a distant hill, a Lannister banner, perhaps, they veered away like foxes from a wolfhound. Rhaegar asked once for news of his father and received only silence. It was Arthur who finally said, "The last we knew, Lord Tywin waited beyond the city walls with his armies, claiming to come in peace. Varys expected him to betray us. He said as much to you, Varys." The memory surfaced. The eunuch's soft, damp hands twined together, his mouth pursed. "He has not ridden all that way to mend old quarrels, my prince. The lion does not come to bow." Rhaegar closed his eyes. "If the city falls before we return," Arthur did not answer. Perhaps he could not. The war had slipped beyond the prince's fingers the moment Robert's hammer struck. Now they rode behind it, chasing its smoke. The tower rose from the desert like a shard of bone. By the time they saw it, the sun was bleeding itself out along the western edge of the sky. Pale orange light caught on the pale stones, painting them peach and rose, turning the surrounding scrublands to a sea of shadows. The Tower of Joy, the small folk called it. To Rhaegar it had been a promise, a refuge carved out of a barren place, the one spot in the realm where he had believed the future could still be made by his own hand. Now his hand shook on the reins. 3 white cloaks were visible even at a distance, posted along the low wall that ringed the tower's base. Ser Gerald Hightower, tall and severe. Ser Arthur's elder in rank if not in skill. Ser Lewin Martell, dark, slight, with the sun and spear worked into his armor. Ser Harlan Hightower stiff as any statue. When they saw the approaching riders, their swords leapt free in silver arcs. Arthur raised an arm. "Hold!" he called. The 3 Kingsguard descended from the wall like loosed arrows. Gerald arrived first, boots sending little puffs of dust up in his wake. His eyes went wide at the sight of the man swaying in the saddle behind Arthur. "By all the gods," he breathed, "we were sure you dead." "Not yet," Rhaegar said. His voice was threadbare. "Help me down, Gerald, before I fall and make liars of you all." They half carried him into the tower, through the cool stone entry where the sounds of the desert died, and up a flight of steps that stretched forever. The faint scent of lavender clung to the air. He knew the turn of this corridor, the iron ring on this door. He had left her behind it. The chamber was dim, lit by a single narrow window where the dying sun pressed in one last finger of light. Pallet lay near the wall, sheets twisted. Beside it, a low cradle held a blanket-wrapped bundle that stirred faintly at the sound of boots. Lyanna Stark sat in a tall chair by the window, a book forgotten in her lap. She looked up at the noise, hand flying to her throat. For a heartbeat, Rhaegar saw the girl from Harrenhal. Hair tumbling loose over men's clothing, a blue winter rose pinned at her breast, laughing as the mystery knight put his lance in the bull's shield. Then that image shattered against the woman before him. She was thinner, the angles of her face sharper, but her eyes were the same gray winter. The dress she wore now was Dornish cut but stark sober, dyed a soft blue that made her look paler than she was. A faint line of exhaustion bracketed her mouth. Her right hand still hovered at her throat, fingers pressed against the hollow as if to hold something in. "Rhaegar," she said. His name on her tongue was at once question and accusation. "What happened?" "We heard nothing for days. Then riders from the north, banners with the direwolf." Her voice broke. She swallowed it back down. "Arthur? Oswell, what has become of the war?" Rhaegar found that he could not meet her eyes. "For long. I lost the Trident," he said. "Robert holds the field. He thinks me dead. My father, the city." The words tangled. He shook his head once, sharply, as if to clear water from his ears. "I do not know yet. We rode hard." Lyanna's gaze flicked across him, taking in the blood-stiff bandages beneath the half-laced tunic, the bruises blooming along his throat, the way he leaned subtly into Arthur for support. For a moment something that might have been pity softened her mouth. Then she looked past him. "Ser Gerald, Ser Lewin, you swore me news." "We swore to guard you, my lady," Gerald Hightower said. His face was granite. "And we have done so, until now." "Until now." Lyanna's eyes narrowed. "What is that meant to?" The bundle in the cradle let out a soft mewl. Lyanna's head snapped toward it. Rhaegar felt everything else in the room blur. He moved before he could stop himself, drawn like iron to a lodestone. Arthur's hand shot out, but Gerald lifted 2 fingers, holding him back. "Let him," his eyes said without speaking. "Let him see." The babe's hair, where it peeked from the blanket, was dark, almost black. Rhaegar's heart clenched. For a wild instant he thought of Brandon Stark, laughing and reckless, his hand tight around a sword hilt. Then the child's face scrunched, mouth opening to show a pink tongue, and all other thoughts fled. He reached, trembling, and Lyanna gently guided the small body into his arms. The babe was heavier than he expected, and at the same time shockingly fragile. A living, squirming thing, his fingers curled around the back of the tiny neck. "He has your look," Rhaegar said hoarsely. "Those eyes." "He has not decided what he thinks of the world yet," Lyanna said. Weariness roughened her tone. Underneath it something fierce glinted. "We will see what color they end up." "What name?" he asked. She hesitated. "I've been calling him John. The midwife had a brother by that name." Her gaze flicked to his. "You said you had a name in mind." Jaehaerys, he had dreamed once, in firelight and prophecy. The prince that was promised, born of ice and fire. His coming written in old scrolls and whispered by madmen. The child who would sing the song that would save the world. Looking down at the infant now, he tasted ash. Jaehaerys had been a king who united a realm, who ruled in peace. What had he bought this child instead? A war, a river of corpses. "He is John for now," Rhaegar said, surprising himself. He smiled, jagged as it felt. "We shall not burden him with old kings before he can even lift his head." Lyanna's shoulders loosened the barest bit. "Your Grace," Gerald said, and there was something in his voice that Rhaegar had never heard before. Caution. "We must speak of what is to come." Rhaegar looked up. The child stirred, fisted one tiny hand into his torn tunic. "My father, we do not know his fate," Gerald said. "We know only that Lord Tywin Lannister marched to King's Landing under peace banners and that Lord Varys suspected treachery. We know the rebel lords converged on the city. We know that Lord Stannis Baratheon's fleet held Dragonstone for now. After that," he spread his hands. "If the city has fallen," Lewin Martell said quietly, "then Dorne will be in danger. Elia," his mouth tightened. "Your wife and children remained in the Red Keep, did they not?" The room seemed to tilt. Rhaegar closed his eyes for a heartbeat. Dizzy. He pictured Elia on the balcony above the sea. Shawl wrapped around her thin shoulders, Rhaenys tugging at her hand. He had kissed them each before he rode for the Trident. Rhaenys had made him promise to bring her back a dragon. He had lied and told her the world was full of them if one knew where to look. "I left them under my father's protection," he said. His throat felt like it had swallowed sand. "Under the protection of the Kingsguard I took from you." Lewin flinched as if struck. "You took me to this tower at your command, Rhaegar. I do not forget my duties lightly." "I took you from them," Rhaegar said. "That is what I forget lightly, it seems." The child squirmed against his chest, small warmth anchoring him. For a moment he wanted nothing more than to sit, to sink into the chair by the window and let the world fall away, to listen only to this tiny heartbeat and the slow breaths of the woman beside him. But his father's face loomed in his mind, pale and wild, eyes bright with the light of fires only he could see. He remembered the smell of burning men in the throne room, the screams echoing off marble. He remembered shouting at Aerys, pleading with him to stop, to listen, to let him take over the war. He remembered the spittle at the corner of the king's mouth as he screamed, "Burn them all." "If my father lives," Rhaegar said, "he will never yield. If Robert holds the Trident and marches on the capital, Aerys will drag the realm down in wildfire rather than let stags take his city." He shook his head once, sharply. "If he is dead and my children..." He could not finish. In that unfinished space, his mind presented an image of Robert Baratheon striding through the Red Keep with his hammer in hand. Tywin Lannister's men in crimson cloaks behind him, their faces spattered with blood. The lion at the gates, the stag in the throne room, the dragon on the steps. Wings broken, throat bared. "Then there is a king in King's Landing who is not of my line," Rhaegar said. "You think Robert will take the throne?" Lyanna's tone was flat, as if the words were stones she could not quite spit out. "He wanted only you dead. He shouted it enough. He is a man who prefers to take everything when the door is open," Gerald said. The rebels felt wronged. Lord John Arryn called banners for honor's sake when your father demanded the heads of Stark boys. Lord Hoster to protect his grandchild's father. Lord Tully to avenge his daughter's betrothed. But once the banners are raised, lords begin to dream. A realm weary of fire and madness might welcome a warrior king with open arms. Robert on the Iron Throne. It was almost comical. Rhaegar had seen him drunk at feasts, had heard his booming laugh across the lists at Harrenhal, had watched him kiss girls with the careless ease of a man who believed the world would always set itself right for him. A part of Rhaegar had liked him once. That was before Lyanna. The woman in the chair by his side sat very still, her hand resting on the carved arm. One finger tapped once, twice, 3 times. If Robert is to be king, he will come here for me, she said, or send men. The moment he learns I am alive, he will not rest. He believes himself promised to me still, whatever I may think of it. He will come for you and for the child, Gerald said. No matter what crown he wears, he will call this abduction and dishonor. He will call the boy a bastard born of treason. The North will howl for your return, my lady, and the Stormlands will thunder with them. And you? Lyanna asked. What will you call me, Ser Gerald? There was steel in her gaze now, a flash of the girl who had ridden a horse as if she meant to break the wind itself. Rhaegar wondered, not for the first time, what would have become of her if she had been born with a sword in her hand and a keep to rule. The thought did not fit in the shapes the world allowed. You are the woman our prince chose, Gerald said carefully. The woman he wed in secret under the Seven's eyes, or so he says. Oaths were broken in that choosing. You know that. So do you, she shot back. You, who turned your backs on Elia Martell to guard me in this tower, who left the Queen's children in the hands of a mad king. Do not speak to me of broken oaths. Lewin Martell flinched as if she had cut him. Gerald's jaw tightened. Arthur's hand hovered near his sword hilt, not to draw it, but as if his fingers needed the reassurance of its familiarity. She is not wrong, Rhaegar said quietly. The words were bitter but necessary. We have all broken something. Lyanna looked at him, and he saw the hurt beneath her anger. Did you win me a better world, at least? She asked. You told me there must be meaning in all of this, that there was a song to be sung that only we could bring into the world. Her gaze dropped to the child in his arms. Is this what you promised him? I promised him life, Rhaegar said. Not a simple thing. Well, she leaned back in the chair, fatigue washing over her features again. Then you had best decide what kind of life it will be, Prince of Dragonstone. My brother rides south, I'm told, with the men of the North at his back. If Robert does not find us, Ned will. He will not trust you. He will not trust me. Her mouth twitched. He will trust this child least of all, if he sees only the part of him that is dragon. Eddard Stark is an honorable man, Rhaegar said. He will not murder a babe. Lyanna's laugh was without humor. Honor killed my father and my brother both. It will not spare my son for long. The babe, as if offended by all this talk over his head, screwed up his face and let out a thin wail. Lyanna rose, slower than he remembered her moving, and Rhaegar relinquished the little weight to her. She cradled him with an ease that spoke of sleepless nights and learned patterns. Gerald is right, Rhaegar said. We must speak of what is to come. Arthur, Oswell, Lewin, stay. He glanced at Lyanna. You as well. This concerns you most of all. She sank back into the chair with the child at her breast, lifting the fabric of her gown without embarrassment. The babe latched on greedily. Rhaegar forced himself to ignore the strange ache the sight stirred in him. He straightened as best he could, fighting another throb of pain. If my father lives, he will not yield. If he is dead or deposed, the throne is empty, or else occupied by one who has no right to it. Either way, the realm stands on a knife's edge. I am the rightful heir by blood, but blood has not counted for much of late. You would challenge Robert, Arthur said. It was not a question. I must, Rhaegar said simply. If he sits the throne, he will spend his reign warring against the dead king in his mind. He will see dragons in every shadow. He will never forget Lyanna, nor forgive me. Tell me that is not so, Luwin, you who fought beside him when we were boys. Luwin's gaze went distant, back to the time when Robert and Ned had been pages in the Vale, when Rhaegar had sat apart with scrolls and songs. He is a man who burns hot, the Dornish knight said at last. Quick to laughter, quick to rage, quick to bed and quicker to the bottle. He loves fiercely and hates the same way. There is no middle road with him. He looked at Lyanna. He would have loved you as well as he knew how, my lady. That love might have killed you. Lyanna said nothing. Her hand stroked the infant's dark hair. If Robert is allowed to rule uncontested, Rhaegar went on, the realm will fracture. Dorne will not forget Elia. The Reach smarts at being held aside. The Riverlands have bled for this war and will want recompense. The North will resent any slight against their honor regarding Lyanna. We will have a usurper nursing grievances and great houses nursing their own. That is a recipe for chaos. I know chaos. I was raised in it. And if you take the throne? Arthur asked softly. Do you imagine they will forget the burning of Rickard Stark and Brandon, the murder of your cousins at Duskendale, the way your father laughed as men died screaming? Do you think the North and the Stormlands will bend the knee and call it peace just because a different Targaryen sits the chair? No, Rhaegar said. I think they might if they believed that Targaryen meant to make amends. If he came, not as his father's son, but as the man who stopped him. Lyanna's head lifted. Stopped him. Her eyes sharpened. You said yourself you do not know if he lives or dies. I meant to stop him, Rhaegar said. He looked down at his own hands, still shaking faintly, stained with dried blood. I meant to ride from the Trident to the city, throw him from the throne if need be, and stand before the realm with his crown in my hands. To say, this ends. The fire is quenched. I failed at the first part, it seems. I do not mean to fail the second. Gerald drew breath, sharp as a drawn blade. You speak of regicide, your grace. I speak of mercy, Rhaegar said, and suddenly he felt bone-weary. Mercy for the realm that has endured my father's madness too long. Lyanna's gaze flickered across his face. And mercy for Elia? She asked. For the wife you left in that madman's care? That cut deeper than any sword. If she lives and the children live, then I have wronged them beyond measure, Rhaegar said. He forced himself to say it. There is no word large enough for it. If they live, I must find some way to make it less. If they are dead, he swallowed. If they are dead, then I will burn the lion that killed them out of the story, but I will not set the realm aflame with him. I cannot. The wheel has crushed too many. Silence fell around that. Lyanna's jaw tilted as if she wanted to argue and found no words. Gerald stared at a point on the wall, his face an unmoving mask. Only Arthur met Rhaegar's gaze without flinching. You would challenge Robert openly? Arthur asked. Not as a shadow, not as a whisper of survival, but as prince to king? Yes, Rhaegar said. If Robert sits the throne, I will call him out. I will lay my claim before the realm. The lords will have to choose. Some will choose him, some me. Some will attempt to stand aside and be dragged in nonetheless. He managed a grim smile. Such is the way of our noble houses. You would risk the realm on another battle? Luwin demanded. Have you not spilled enough blood? My family's blood among them? Rhaegar met his uncle by marriage's eyes. Would you see a realm ruled by the man who killed your niece's children, if that is what came to pass? Who took her daughter and son from her arms and dashed their heads against a wall? He did not know that had happened. The words came like stones flung into dark water. Tywin Lannister will not have done it himself. He will find men to do it, dogs to wear his colors. Robert may wash his hands at the thought, but he will sit on a throne glued together with such acts. If I allow that, I stain myself as surely as if I had held the child myself. Luwin's face went white, not white, the color of desert sand before a storm. You speak as if you have seen it. I speak as if I have seen my father, Rhaegar said quietly. I know what men will do in the name of a king when a king demands savagery and madness. My father made a ghost of me once when he turned to fire. I will not let Robert make a ghost of me again by turning a blind eye to what it takes to hold his crown. Lyanna shivered. I dreamed, she said. Her free hand tightened on the arm of the chair. I dreamed of a man in golden armor with a lion's face, his hands red to the elbow. He lifted a babe by the foot and laughed. There were spears on the walls and white cloaks on the ground. Gerald's lips moved soundlessly, as if praying. Dreams do not dictate. Dreams do not dictate, Rhaegar agreed softly, but they can warn. They can show us the shape of what men like Tywin will do if we give them reason and opportunity. I have given them reason enough. My father will give them the rest. He drew a slow breath that stung. We cannot undo what has been done. We can decide what comes next. And what comes next, in your mind? Lyanna asked. Say your father is dead. Say Elia and the children live, or say they don't, if that makes it easier for you. Say Robert has taken the city and sits the throne and drinks from the cup and calls himself king. You ride north, raise banners from whatever friends your house has left, and ride back to meet him in another river of mud, again and again until one of you lies dead and the realm is nothing but ashes. No, Rhaegar said, we do not have to make the same mistakes. You want to parley with him? Arthur's voice held no scorn, only curiosity. To offer what? Not parley, Rhaegar said. A challenge. You already met in single combat, Lewin said harshly. He beat you. He beat me in a river already won, Rhaegar replied. His men had the ford almost taken. I bore the hopes of too many on my shoulders and did not listen to the wind. He remembered Robert's hammer arcing in, the shock of impact. I will not make excuses. He bested me, but that duel did not decide the crown, merely the battle. He took one breath, then another, tasting the enormity of what he was about to say. This time, the duel will decide the throne, not the madness of my father, not the ambitions of Tywin or Hoster or anyone else, just what the realm has always loved best. Two men with steel and the gods watching. You would stake the 7 kingdoms on a duel, Gerald said slowly. The 7 kingdoms stake themselves on war, Rhaegar answered. This will be simpler, if no less bloody. I will send word to him when I am ready. I will declare myself alive and rightful heir. I will offer a challenge. Meet me in a place we agree to with a handful of chosen witnesses from each great house. Let us settle it with our own hands. If he kills me, I will be truly dead and my claim with me. If I kill him, his rebellion dies with him. Either way, the realm gets one small, defined horror instead of years of flickering ones. And if he refuses? Lyanna asked. Then he admits his fear to all, Rhaegar said. He can still cling to his throne with lawn, Ister gold and swords, but the memory will linger behind every oath. The stag that would not stand. I do not say that alone will unseat him, but it will plant something in the hearts of men. Doubt. You think men care for such things? Lewin asked. Men care for full bellies and safety. They care for lands and sons. Stories are well enough for singers. Stories are the bones of the realm, Rhaegar said, and for the first time in days the old fire stirred in him. Men follow banners because of what they believe those banners mean. They whisper of Aegon the Conqueror because the story of him burns bright. They whispered of my father once as well, before they saw the truth of the man beneath the crown. Robert's story so far is easy to love. The wronged lord, the fearless warrior, the hammer in his hand and the woman stolen from him. The song writes itself. What happens to that song when the woman stands beside the man who stole her and refuses to go back? And the so-called usurped king offers single combat for the throne instead of burning the world. That is a different tune entirely. One some might prefer to sing. Lyanna's cheeks went faintly flush. You would have me appear at this challenge, she said. To stand at your side like some prize you wrested in the lists. I would have you stand where you choose, Rhaegar said carefully. But yes, If you stand with me, your brother may yet stand with me. The north would be torn either way, but a Stark at my side would weigh heavily. If you return to Robert, I won't. She cut him off. I will not lie in a bed with a man who will look at my child and see only you. I will not bear him sons and watch him name them after my dead father and brother, and then drink to their memory while making more orphans in some war he stirs up to feel alive. Her mouth twisted. I may not know everything, but I know that much. Rhaegar felt something unclench in his chest. Then stand with me, he said, not as a prize, as the mother of my child and the woman I wronged and the proof I mean to do differently. Silence stretched, filled only by the soft suckling sounds of the babe. You ask me to choose between my brothers, Lyanna said finally. Between my blood and this. She looked down at the infant, at the tuft of dark hair, at the tiny fingers gripping her gown. You ask me to help you steal a kingdom from the man who believes I was stolen from him. I ask you to help me keep the realm from breaking further, Rhaegar said. A broken realm will not be kind to your brothers either, or their children. She looked up, their eyes locked. In hers he saw the storms of the north, hard and cold, but also the glimmer of something else. Fear, hope, fury. If I stand with you, she said slowly, you must swear something to me, Rhaegar Targaryen, on your honor and on whatever gods you still bother with. I will, he said. You will swear that my son's life will not be sacrificed on the altar of your prophecies, she said. You will swear that if the world needs a savior, you will find another way, that you will not throw him into the fire because some old book told you a story about stars and smoke. Arthur sucked in a breath. Rhaegar felt the words like a blow. Lyanna, I've heard you speak of it, she said harshly, of the prince who was promised. You spoke of Rhaenys and Aegon as if they were threads in some tapestry you were weaving. You spoke of this child the same, as if he were meant for something more than eating and learning to walk and scraping his knees. I will not have it. If you want me with you, you will swear that whatever else this boy is to the world, he is ours first. A child, not a sacrifice. Rhaegar swallowed. His throat felt suddenly too tight. I believed, he said. I still believe there is a darkness coming, Lyanna. Something worse than my father, worse than Robert, worse than all our stupid wars. I have seen hints of it in scrolls and other places. His dreams, his songs, the mutterings of half-mad men in Asshai that he had never truly visited and yet knew. If it comes, we will not have the luxury of ignoring it. But he looked at the babe. The boy had fallen asleep at his mother's breast, content, oblivious. But I will not burn him, Rhaegar said. The words came out like iron. I swear that to you. Let the old books say what they will. Let the red priests mutter of king's blood. I will not offer my son up. If he is to stand before any darkness, it will be with a sword in his hand that he chooses to lift. Lyanna's shoulders lowered a fraction. Good, she said. Then we are agreed. Are we? Gerald Hightower demanded. You speak of vows lightly, my prince. What of the vows you swore to Elia Martell? To the realm? What of ours to your father? I have worn this white cloak for 3 kings. It does not sit on me easily to talk of drawing steel against the man I am sworn to defend. If my father still lives and I face him, it will not be your swords that kill him, Rhaegar said. It will be mine. He gripped the back of a chair, knuckles white. If the gods have left him any wits at all, I will ask him to yield. If he will not, then I will do what must be done. I will not ask you to stand between us. You need only stand aside. Gerald's jaw worked. That too breaks a vow, he said. A white cloak should not stand aside when a king is in danger. A white cloak should not watch as he burns men alive either, Rhaegar said. Yet you have done that more times than I can count, old friend. We all choose which vows to keep when they collide. The question now is which choice leaves the realm with any hope of peace. Arthur's eyes were on Rhaegar's face, measuring. If you mean to challenge Robert, he said, you will need more than high talk of honor and sacrifice. You will need men, banners, food, gold. The crownlands are broken. The king's name is mud north of the Blackwater. Half the Stormlands and Riverlands would hang you if they could. Who will you call? Dorne alone cannot win a war for you, and I do not know even if they will answer. Luwin let out a bitter laugh. They will answer, he said. If Elia and the children are dead, they will answer to tear your enemies to shreds, and possibly you with them when there is time. If Elia lives, they will answer to put you in a cell beside her, so she can tell you herself what she thinks of all this. That is why I must go, Rhaegar said. Not only to the Martells, to all of them, to Jon Arryn in the Vale, who knows Robert as a foster son and me only as the boy in the crib who became a stranger, to Hoster Tully, who fears what the Lannisters will do with their claws in the throne, to Mace Tyrell, who cares more for pageantry and precedence than for anything else, but whose men are well-fed and whose fields are unburnt. I must go to them not as king in exile, but as a man who has seen his father's sins and means to do better. Lyanna lifted a brow. And you think they will believe you? They may not, Rhaegar admitted, but they will listen. Men love nothing more than to be courted by a claimant. Robert will have done it already. He will have promised them honors, lands, marriages. Each promise is a chain. I will offer something else. What? Luwin asked, sounding almost amused despite himself. Limits, Rhaegar said. An end to the games my father played with wildfire and fear. A council that holds the king to account. A voice in how we mend what has been broken. Men who have lived under a mad dragon might find some comfort in a tamed one. A tamed dragon, Arthur repeated softly. I am not sure that is what they will see when they look at you. They will see what we show them, Rhaegar said. A prince who yields to a duel rather than a war. A man who stands with the daughter of the man his father killed and asks her house for peace instead of conquest. A king who places his son in the crib beside Eliah's children, if they live, and names them all his heirs, making no bastard of one to honor the others. Lyanna's eyes widened slightly. You would? If Elia lives, Rhaegar said, the words cutting his tongue. And if she will have it, then yes, I will name all my children of equal birthright. I will make no difference between the Dornish prince and the half-northern one. Let them choose among themselves when the time comes, not now, not while they are still babes. It will be messy. It will breed factions, but not more than the factions already loose in the world. Luwin stared at him. Something like grudging respect edged into his expression, mixing with lingering anger. You would bring a stark wolf into the line of dragons openly, he said. Not hide him under some false name, as a bastard in a corner of the world. Rhaegar thought of hiding the boy in a northern fastness, calling him Snow, watching him grow up in another man's hall knowing that somewhere, someday, the truth might emerge like a blade from the dark. The idea sickened him more than he expected. No, he said, I am finished with secrets that rot the foundations. If this child lives to be a man, he will know who he is. The realm will know who he is. If that costs me some lords now, so be it. Better their anger than his confusion. Lyanna's shoulders relaxed more fully now, as if some rope holding her taut had loosened. Then we have an accord, she said quietly. You will challenge Robert. You will seek allies, not just men but ways to bind them that do not lead us back to this place in another 20 years. You will not sacrifice this child to your ghosts. And when my brother comes, you will speak to him yourself. I will, Rhaegar said, and you will let me speak as well, she added. He will not hear it from your mouth alone. He will call you liar and murderer. He might listen to me, he might not. Either way, I will have my say. You will, he agreed. I would not dare to try to keep you from it. Her lips twitched. Smart man, she murmured. The babe burped against her, milk-drunk and limp. Lyanna shifted him to her shoulder, patting his back with a gentleness at odds with the steel in her words. Then we should make ready, Arthur said. Dawn, wrapped and sheathed, gleamed faintly over his shoulder even in the dim light, as if eager for what lay ahead. If the rebel host won the Trident, It will not be long before some part of it turns south. We cannot stay in this tower forever. We ride soon, Rhaegar said. Not today, perhaps not tomorrow. I must heal enough to sit a horse without falling. He exhaled, the breath hissing through his teeth. In the meantime, we post double watches. We send no ravens. Any message can be intercepted. Instead, we trust to one thing only. What is that? Lewin asked. That I was buried by the Trident in the eyes of the world, Rhaegar said. Let them think me moldering in the riverbed a little while longer. Let Robert drink to that. When he finds I am not, let it be at a time and place of my choosing, with the eyes of the realm upon us. Not on some muddy field with only dead men as witnesses. Lyanna looked at him over the sleeping child's head. You mean to come back from the dead before an audience, she said. You Targaryens never do anything by halves, do you? We do some things by thirds, he said, surprising himself. Wrong thing, wrong time, wrong man. To his astonishment, a huff of laughter escaped her. It was small and sharp like a spark off flint, but it was laughter all the same. It warmed him more than the maester's draft ever had. Outside, the sun slipped below the horizon. The first stars pricked through the deepening blue, a handful at first, then more. Somewhere to the north, beyond rivers and fields and broken banners, Robert Baratheon might Alria. DY be raising cups to the dead prince whose ribs still ached in a lonely tower in the south. Rhaegar watched the night gather and thought of songs yet unwritten. When Eddard Stark came to the Tower of Joy, it was not alone. They saw the dust of their approach first, a brown plume smudging the clear blue line of the horizon. Gerald was on the western watch that day. He sent a boy running for Arthur, who was drilling Oswell in some new formation in the dry yard below. Rhaegar stepped out onto the tower's upper battlement, squinting against the glare. The desert stretched around them, empty and pitiless, but on that emptiness the riders grew, black dots resolving into men and horses and banners. The dire wolf of Stark snapped in the wind at their head. Beside it flew the winged knight of House Dane, a shattered sword argent on purple. The sight made Arthur's brows knit. Ashera, he muttered, barely audible. Rhaegar glanced at him. Your sister rides with them? Likely not, Arthur said, but her house does. Father always did have a fondness for northern honor when it came wrapped in a handsome face. If he knew where you hid your Stark lady, he would have sent half the garrison to watch over her out of mischief. Rhaegar said nothing. His hand drifted to the hilt at his hip. Arthur had insisted he take a lighter sword for now, not the great blade loaned from the armory, but it felt heavy enough. 7. Oswell swore softly as the riders drew nearer. He has brought few. Rhaegar counted them, 7 men with 2 squires behind. Eddard Stark rode in the lead, lean and long-faced, his dark hair whipped by the wind. Beside him rode a man Rhaegar recognized from descriptions. Howland Reed, the crannogman from the neck, smaller than the rest but sitting his horse with an odd, wary grace. The others wore no great house sigils Rhaegar could place at a glance. One was barrel-chested and scarred. Another had a mole on his cheek the size of a coin. They were the sort of men a lord took with him when he expected trouble. No host lies over that hill, Gerald said. He has come as a brother, not as a conqueror. He has come as both, Rhaegar said quietly. The line between them is thinner than we like to think. Lyanna stood behind him, cloak drawn tight around her shoulders despite the heat. Her hair was braided in a northern fashion today, as if she had reached for home with her fingers while he slept. The child, John, still John, slept in the crook of her arm, unknowing. He will want to see you at once, she said. And me. He will have us, Rhaegar said. Better sooner than later. He would have preferred more time to prepare, more time to build his strength and his arguments both, but the world rarely waited for princes. He straightened his shoulders, testing the pull in his ribs. The maester's drafts and Lyanna's stubborn nagging had mended him more than he'd expected. Pain remained, a dull echo instead of the sharp stab of those first days. They descended together. Arthur and Gerald flanked him, Oswell walking just behind. Lewin took another stair, moving to manage the gate. The tower was small enough that the arrival felt almost intimate. There would be no great hall, no formality to hide behind. Only stone, sun, and old oaths. By the time they stepped into the yard, the riders had reached the base of the low outer wall. Dust clung to their boots and horses alike. Eddard Stark reined his horse at the sight of the white cloaks. "Sir Gerald Hightower," he said, voice steady, though his eyes flicked past the tower commander to Rhaegar. "Sir Arthur Dane, Sir Oswell Went, Sir Lewin Martell. I did not expect to find you here." "Lord Eddard," Gerald said. His tone was courteous but cool. "You ride far from home." "I came seeking my sister," Stark said. His gaze cut to Lyanna. Asterisk, "It seems I was not wrong." Lyanna's fingers tightened around the bundle in her arms, but she did not step back. "Hello, Ned," she said. "You took your time." His face changed then. All the tight control cracked for a heartbeat as he drank her in. Alive, thinner but unburnt, the child in her arms, the tower behind her. Rhaegar saw fury there, and relief, and something like betrayal. "You are alive," he said softly. "I am harder to kill than father thought," Lyanna answered. "And so are you, it seems." His eyes flicked to Rhaegar, narrowed. "Your Grace," he said after a beat. The title scraped raw. "We had heard you dead upon the Trident. I suppose I should not be surprised to find that rumor false, given the rest." Rhaegar stepped forward, stopping just inside sword's reach, hands empty and visible. He saw Howland Reed's fingers flicker toward the haft of the spear slung across his back. The other northern men shifted, gripping hilts. "There is much to explain," Rhaegar said. "More than can be done in a yard. Will you dismount and come inside, Lord Stark? You have ridden far. We can at least offer water and shade." Eddard Stark's jaw worked. For a moment Rhaegar thought he would refuse. Then, with a small exhale, he swung down from his horse. "I will hear you," he said. "For the sake of the sister I thought dead." "And I will hear you," Lyanna cut in sharply. "For the sake of the brother I thought reasonable." One of the northern men snorted. The moment's tension broke like a thin crust of ice. Howland Reed's shoulders eased a fraction. Inside, the tower was cooler but no less close. They gathered in the main chamber where Lyanna spent most of her days, around a rough-hewn table that had seen more maps and arguments in recent weeks than meals. Gerald, Arthur, Oswell, and Lewin took positions around the room, white cloaks ink-streaked by the dimness. Eddard Stark sat opposite Rhaegar, sword at his hip, the lines around his mouth deepening. Lyanna took a place between them, the babe in, a cradle at her side. The child slept still, unaware of how many fates stirred in the air above his head. "Start with why," Eddard said without preamble. "Why my sister disappeared. Why we found father's bones blackened and Brandon's neck stretched. Why the Prince of Dragonstone left his wife and children to rot in King's Landing while he hid in a tower with a northern girl and 3 of the King's Guard." Rhaegar held his gaze. "Because my father was mad," he said. "Because I was a coward until I tried not to be, and clumsy when I finally moved my hand. Because your sister wanted to be more than a broodmare in a hall she did not choose, and because I believed I could find some way to have both her and a realm at peace. I was wrong in almost every way that mattered." He spread his hands, feeling the weight of that admission. "But not in all." Eddard's eyes flicked to Lyanna. "You wanted this?" he demanded. "You chose to run off with him, knowing what it would mean? Knowing Robert? Knowing father?" Lyanna's lips thinned. "I chose not to be dragged to Storm's End like a lamb to a breeding pen," she shot back. "I chose not to marry a man who smells of ale and slaughter when he bothers to bed me at all. I chose not to watch him cheat on me in every camp and city, then come back to me with a grin and an apology as if that patched it. I chose not to let father trade me like cattle for an alliance he didn't even bother to explain. Yes, Ned, I chose." "You might have said as much," Eddard murmured. "You might have turned to me, to Brandon. And what would you have done?" she demanded. Stood in Father's hall and told him no? Told Robert no? You know what that would have earned you. Father would have dragged me to the sept himself while you watched, or he would have found another way to send you south in chains. He loved you, Ned, but he loved his honor more. I decided to love my life instead. Eddard flinched as if struck. Rhaegar said nothing. This was not his argument. He had played his part in it already, on a cold night by a river when he had wrapped a blue cloak around Lyanna's shoulders in place of the one she had worn. He took you from your home, Eddard said after a slow breath. His gaze cut back to Rhaegar. He dishonored you. He dishonored Elia Martell. Did you think of them, Lyanna? Of a wife left waiting for a husband who rode off with another man's betrothed. I thought of Elia every day, Lyanna said, surprising him. I thought of her while I vomited up my meals and while I lay awake wondering if the babe inside me would kill me. I thought of the unfairness of it and I hated him for it. She nodded toward Rhaegar. Does that satisfy you? That I saw the wrong in the thing I chose? That I was not blind with love as some girl in a song? It satisfies me that you are not the fool in this room, Eddard said tightly. Rhaegar accepted the barb. Elia did not deserve what I did to her, he said. Nor did you, Lord Stark, nor did your father. But we cannot peel the last year back like a bad page. We must start where we are. And where are we? Eddard asked. Because from where I sit, we are in a tower in the far south guarded by men who should be in King's Landing, with a prince who should be dead and a sister who should be a widow or a lady of Storm's End. And none of that is so. The realm is in chaos. Robert is king now. The crying of that babe will not change it. Lyanna's hand snapped out, fingers curling into her brother's sleeve. Careful, she said softly. There was ice in it. That babe is blood of yours as well, whether you like it or no. Eddard looked at the child. Rhaegar watched the war on his face. His father is the man who helped kill ours, he said. His mother lied to us. His mother tried to live, Lyanna said, and your precious king would have killed him if he knew he existed. He might yet. Will you help him with that? No, Eddard said immediately, then again slower as if testing the word for cracks. No, whatever else, I am not a child killer. Rhaegar let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Good, he said, because I mean to see that this child grows to manhood one way or another, perhaps at my side, perhaps not, but alive. There is something you must know, Eddard said abruptly, as if the words tore at him. Before you spin more plans from the web you have woven, Robert sits the Iron Throne. Tywin Lannister opened the gates of King's Landing in the king's name and then sacked the city in his own. Men wearing his colors murdered Prince Aegon and Princess Rhaenys. I saw their bodies. Robert saw their bodies. He took his crown on a throne soaked in their blood and called it justice. The room tilted. Rhaegar heard a roaring that might have been the sea. His hand closed convulsively on the edge of the table. Aegon, he said. The name was a whisper. Rhaenys. Eddard's eyes softened, only slightly. Rhaenys was small, he said. They stabbed her in her bed. Aegon, they dashed against a wall. I told Robert it was wrong. I told him it was murder, not war. He said it was needed to end the dragon line and keep the realm safe. His jaw clenched. He named himself king on the spot. The lords bent knee soon enough. Jaime Lannister put a sword through your father's back when the old man was babbling of wildfire. It was a service to the realm, though the boy meant it for his own reasons. That is the truth of it, as I saw it. Rhaegar closed his eyes. For a moment he was no longer in the tower, but in the nursery in the Red Keep. Rhaenys clambering across the carpet with a wooden dragon in each hand. Aegon gurgling in his cradle. He heard Elaya's voice singing under her breath. A song of water gardens and orange blossoms. The scent of her skin after she bathed. The way she laughed when Rhaenys pulled her hair. He had ridden from all of that. Not only for Lyanna, she was part of it, but for the dream of a prince who had yet to be born, the child of ice and fire, the answer to scrolls that had haunted him. He had told himself that Aegon was too frail, that the realm needed a different kind of air. He had told himself Elia would be safe, that his father's madness had bounds. He had been wrong in every possible way. He opened his eyes and met Eddard Stark's gaze. "I will kill Tywin Lannister," he said calmly. The serenity in his own voice surprised him. "That is not a threat, it is a promise. But I will not burn his men alive. I will not scour his lands. I will not make orphans of children who have never seen Casterly Rock. I will kill him and the men who did this thing under his command, and no more. Do you understand me, Lord Stark?" Eddard stared at him. "You speak as if you still had the power to do these things," he said. "As if you still were the Prince of Dragonstone with the armies of the Reach and Royal House at your call. You are a man in a tower with a handful of knights and one northern girl. Robert holds the city. Stannis holds Dragonstone, though he says he holds it for Robert now. The Tyrells have bent the knee. The Tullys have bent the knee. The Arryns. Jon Arryn is hand of the king." Regret flickered across his face at that. "The realm has moved on without you. It has not moved so far I cannot catch it," Rhaegar said. "I will not pretend I have an army. I do not. I have only a name, a claim, and what honor remains to me. But those things matter. They weigh on scales you may not see yet." "Honor?" Eddard repeated flatly. "What honor have you, who stole my betrothed and abandoned your wife, whose father burned mine alive? You speak high words. I see little beneath them." "Then see this," Rhaegar said. He straightened, feeling the pull in his side, and put his hand on the table as if it were a dock and he a man about to leap. "I will not ask you to forgive me your father's death. That is not mine to forgive. I will not ask you to forget Elia or the children. I will not ask you to love me for loving your sister. All I ask is that you judge me for what I do now, not only for what I have already done. I will challenge Robert, not with an army but with steel. I will call him to single combat. If he accepts and kills me, then his crown will shine brighter for it. If he refuses, you and every man in the realm will know what kind of king he is. If I kill him..." His voice caught just once when he said it, but he forced the words out. "If I kill him, I will sit the throne not by treachery or by wildfire or by sack, but by a trial of arms. The realm will have seen it. Perhaps then we can begin to mend." Eddard stared at him as if he had grown a second head. "You would stake the crown on a duel," he said. "You are madder than your father." "We have been over this ground," Arthur murmured. Eddard shot him a look. "And you support this folly? You, Ser Arthur, who have more sense in your sword arm than most men have in their heads." Arthur's expression was unreadable. "I support the man I have sworn to guard," he said. "I will tell him when I think he rides toward a cliff. I have done so. He rides anyway. My choice then is whether to hold the horse or let it bolt." Eddard let out a short, humorless laugh. "You pour words like fine wine," he said, "but they do not fill the cup." Lyanna's voice cut across them. "Ned," she said, "listen." He looked at her. "I love you," she said simply. "I loved Father. I even loved Brandon, though he was a fool. I loved our crazy, cold little hall, and the way you stood on the battlements watching the snow fall. I know what Robert was to you once. I know what vengeance meant when you rode south. But listen to me now. If Robert holds the throne, if this ends with him drinking himself into a stupor on that ugly chair while Tywin whispers in his ear, do you truly believe we will see peace? Or will we see more feasts, more wars, more murdered children when it suits them?" Eddard's mouth opened, then closed. He looked away. "I am not asking you to embrace Rhaegar," she went on. "I am asking you to think past the next heartbeat, past your anger, past your grief. Think of what Father would have wanted if he could see clearly. Think of what Mother would have said. Think of what you will tell your own children if you live to have them. Will you say you bent the knee to a king who laughed over a dead babe? Or to one who stood in front of him and said no more?" Eddard's hands clenched on the table. "Do you truly believe he will accept this duel?" he asked at last, voice hoarse. "Robert, He will say he has no need. He has the throne already. Why risk it on a prince he believes should be dead? He may, Rhaegar said, but he is not a cautious man. He is a proud one. He has built himself a song in his mind. The usurped lord, the stolen lady, the slain prince. He has drunk deep on the praise of men who care more for his hammer than his crown. If he refuses, some will whisper he feared me. I know him enough to think he will not like that taste. And if he does not care, Eddard said, if he laughs, slams his cup down, and says let the dragon come see what good his sword is against the walls of King's Landing, then I will know, Rhaegar said softly, and so will you. The path will be narrower then, but at least we will see it for what it is. Eddard looked at Lyanna again. For the first time, Rhaegar saw the likeness between them not just in their faces but in the set of their shoulders, the way they braced against a blow. If I agree to this madness, Eddard said slowly, what do you ask of me? Very little, Rhaegar said, and very much. I ask that you do not draw steel on me today, that you do not try to take your sister and the child by force. I ask that you carry a message for me when you return to King's Landing. A challenge, sealed with my hand. I ask that you lay it before Robert where all the court can hear. I ask that you stand witness, if he accepts, that I met him openly and honorably. That is all, Eddard repeated. For now, Rhaegar said. In return, I offer this. I will swear before you and before the gods that if I win, I will not burn the Stormlands, the North, or any lands that bent the knee to Robert. I will not take vengeance on men simply for having chosen the wrong king. I will hold to the laws my father broke. I will seat a council of great lords to advise the throne, including you if you will take such a place, and grant them more than token power. I will repeal the edicts that let my father take men's lands and lives on a whim. I will send men to the wall, gold to rebuild where war has torn. I will wed my heirs into the houses that opposed me, not only those that supported. In short, I will do what I can to turn this from a story of fire and blood into one of compromise and survival. You promise much, Eddard said. Words are easy. They are all I have at the moment, Rhaegar said. But I mean to find the steel beneath them. Eddard frowned down at the table. His thumb traced an old gouge in the wood, round and shallow, perhaps made by a knife point years ago. Rhaegar waited. It was Lyanna who tipped the scale. She stood, picked up the sleeping babe, and walked around the table to place him in her brother's arms. Eddard jerked back at the contact, as if the child were hot, but he did not drop him. This is Jon, she said. He deserves a chance to grow up in a world where men do not kill king's children to make a point. Help me give him that. Eddard looked down. The child's dark lashes lay soft against his cheeks. His mouth pursed as if he tasted something in a dream. He looks like Brandon, Eddard said quietly. He looks like a babe, Lyanna replied gently. Not a ghost, not a symbol, just a babe. After a long moment, Eddard nodded, once, as if some private argument were settled. He shifted the child with surprising ease. Perhaps he had held children in Winterfell's hall play, younger siblings or fosterlings. Rhaegar suddenly imagined him older, cradling his own infant son or daughter by a long hearth, and wondered what kind of father he would be. I will carry your challenge, Eddard said, looking up. I will lay it before Robert. I will stand witness if he accepts. I will speak for Lyanna's choice, whether he wishes to hear it or not. His gaze hardened. But make no mistake, Your Grace. If you win and then break these vows, if you turn out to be just another mad dragon wearing a different face, I will be the first to draw a sword against you, even if it means standing alone. Rhaegar inclined his head. That is all I could ask, he said. If I fail as my father did, we will need men to stop me. I only hope those men will never have cause. He extended his hand across the table. Eddard Stark stared at it, then slowly reached out and clasped it. His grip was cool and firm, like a winter wind through stone. Word traveled faster than ravens. By the time Eddard Stark rode back into King's Landing, dust on his boots and Rhaegar's challenge sealed in his satchel. The city had rearranged itself around its new king. Banners bearing the crowned stag flew from the walls. The gold cloaks of the city watch had fresh stag brooches on their cloaks. The small folk grumbled less about dragons in their cups and more about the lion's men who had done the sacking. Robert Baratheon held court like a man holding a tankard, firm when he remembered, careless when he didn't. He wore a crown that pinched his temples and a scowl that deepened whenever someone said, "Your Grace," in a tone that reminded him of whom it had been said to before. When Eddard entered the throne room, the king was half slouched on the iron throne, one leg thrown over an arm, goblet dangling from his fingers. Jon Arryn stood at his right, face pale and tight. Tywin Lannister at his left, expression smooth as old gold. Cersei Lannister stood below the dais, beside her father, green eyes sharp. "Eddard," Robert boomed when he saw him. "Ned, come closer, you frosty bastard. I was beginning to think a sand viper had gotten you in Dorne. Or a Dornish woman, which might be worse." Laughter rippled unevenly through the hall. Eddard walked forward, cloak trailing. His eyes flicked to the throne, to the sword at Jaime Lannister's hip where the Kingslayer lounged against a pillar, white cloak pristine. For an instant, the sight of him standing so casually in that place where once Rhaegar had stood struck Eddard as obscene. He bowed, stiffly. "Your Grace." "Come then," Robert said. "Tell us, did you find her? Your little wolf." "I did," Eddard said. The words tasted strange on his tongue, too light for all they carried. He took a breath. "Before I answer that, Your Grace, there is another matter that must be laid before you. A matter of Lyanna." Robert cut him off. "That is the only matter I want laid here that concerns you. I have had enough of dragons and their corpses. Tell me of Lyanna." "She is alive," Eddard said. Silence fell like a dropped curtain. The echo of his words bounced off stone. Robert surged to his feet. His goblet clanged against the iron as it toppled from his hand. "Alive?" He stared down at Eddard, eyes wide, as if the Stark had announced the sun had risen from the wrong horizon. "You saw her, with your own eyes?" "Yes," Eddard said. "She was at a tower in the south, with others." "What tower?" Robert demanded. "Why was she not returned to me at once? She was taken from me, Ned. Stolen. Did you kill him? The silver-haired bastard. Tell me you did." Eddard looked up at the jagged metal of the throne. "Rhaegar Targaryen is alive," he said, and the hall, which had already fallen quiet, seemed to draw in a collective breath. Tywin Lannister's eyes narrowed. Jon Arryn's mouth thinned. Jaime Lannister's hand dropped casually to rest on his sword hilt. Cersei stepped forward half a pace, skirts whispering. Robert stared. "You lie," he said. "I saw him die. I smashed his chest in on the Trident. I saw the river take him." "You saw him fall," Eddard said. "You did not see him die. His men dragged him from the river. He was wounded, but he lives. He lay at that same tower with my sister and his white cloaks, mending his ribs and making plans." "What plans?" Tywin asked, his voice as smooth as oiled leather. "Be careful how you answer, Lord Stark. There is little appetite in this city for more dragon tales." "Plans for further treachery, no doubt," Cersei said lightly. "They breed plots like rats." Eddard's gaze flicked to her, then back to Robert. "He sends a challenge," he said. "A formal one." "A challenge," Robert repeated, half incredulous, half delighted despite himself. "He is alive because my hammer slipped in the mud and he has the balls to challenge me? To what? Another bath? A poetry contest? To single combat," Eddard said clearly, "before the eyes of the realm. He offers to stake his claim and your crown on it. Winner takes the throne." The hall erupted. Voices crashed into one another. Shock, derision, excitement, fear. Eddard let it all wash over him, standing like a rock against a tide. Jon Arryn stepped forward, raising a hand for quiet, but no one heeded him at first. It was Robert who stilled them, not with a gesture but with a roar. "Silence!" he bellowed. The word cracked like a warhammer against steel. The noise died in shreds. Robert descended the steps from the throne slowly, one hand trailing along the sword-backed arms. Up close, Eddard could see the strain in his friend's face. The new lines at the corners of his eyes, the tightness around his mouth. The crown sat low on his brow, as if it weighed more than it should. "He sends this to me?" Robert asked. "The man who stole my betrothed, who started this bloody war, who saw my brothers in arms die upon his father's orders. He sends me a little note asking for a friendly duel? He sends you a challenge witnessed by Ser Gerald Hightower, Ser Arthur Dane, Ser Oswell Went, and Ser Lewin Martell," Eddard said. "Men who are not given to trifles. He proposes both sides meet in the field between King's Landing and the Trident, each allowed 10 sworn men to witness and no more. He will come under a banner of truce. He swears not to bring an army. He offers his word as prince and..." He forced himself to say it, "as rightful heir," gasped, murmurs. "Rightful," someone scoffed, but others whispered more thoughtfully. "And what does he say of Lyanna?" Robert demanded. "Did you ask him that? Did you ask him what he means to do with a woman he tricked into his bed?" "I asked him," Eddard said. "She answered too. She says she will not return to Storm's End. Not as your bride. She stands with Rhaegar." Robert's face went white, then red. For a heartbeat Eddard feared he would strike him, friend or no. The king's hands clenched as if around an invisible throat. "She stands with him," Robert repeated softly. "My Lyanna. She is not yours," Eddard said before he could stop himself. Robert's head snapped up. For a heartbeat, they were not king and lord but 2 boys in the eyrie, faces flushed from a tumble in the yard. "She was promised to me," Robert said through his teeth. "I loved her, Ned. I rode to war for her." "You rode to war because Father and Brandon were murdered," Eddard said. "Do not twist it into some pretty song where you are the only player." He glanced up at the hall. "And you did not love her, not as she is. You loved the idea of her. You loved the thought of the wolf girl who would bear you sons and laugh at your jests and forgive your appetites. You never saw her." "How dare you?" Robert whispered. "How dare you?" Eddard shot back, quieter but no less fierce. "How dare you speak of love while standing on the corpses of children? I saw what was done to Eliah's babes. Do not expect me to clap when you say the Dragon Prince deserves worse." Robert flinched, as if reminded of a bruise. "Tywin's doing," he muttered. "Not mine. You sit that throne on the strength of his doing," Eddard said. "Own it or renounce it." "Enough," Jon Arryn said sharply before Robert could answer. The old falcon's voice cut through the hall like a sudden gust of mountain air. "This is not the place for old friends to tear each other apart. The matter before us is grave. Let us speak of it duly." Robert dragged in a breath. He turned away from Eddard, pacing 3 steps, then back. "He thinks he can just ride up and call me out," he growled. "As if this were some damn tourney. The realm is settled. The dragons are dead, save for this one scrawny survivor. Why should I risk what we have won on his pride?" "Because men will talk if you refuse," Tywin Lannister said calmly. All eyes turned to him. "They will say you fear him. They will say you know you hold your crown by another man's act and do not wish to be reminded of it." Robert sneered. "Let them talk. I have their swords. Their bellies are full again. Their fields will be replanted. If they grumble in their cups, I will not hear it." "Words have a way of growing sharper in the dark," Tywin replied. "You may not hear them yourself, your grace, but they can cut you all the same. Remember how your rebellion began. With mutters, with letters, with men saying the Dragon King had lost the grace of the gods. Do not give your enemies such tales to tell." "You would have me accept," Robert said. "Risk my life on one fight." Tywin's eyes were hard gold. "I would have you show the realm you are unafraid," he said. You slew him once already, so the song goes, owe it again before witnesses and be done with it. And if the hammer slips a second time? Cersei asked quietly. All eyes snapped to her. If he rides with some trick? Wildfire hidden in the ground. Sells words in the bushes. 10 men sworn to witness. 10 more in the shadows, and a dragon at their head. There are no dragons left, Robert snapped, but doubt flickered. Rhaegar's letter swears no treachery, Jon Arryn said. And whatever else he is, I have never known him for an oathbreaker. That sin lies more with kings of late. Robert shot him a look. You would have me accept too? Old man, I swore my oaths to you when we were boys. You were as a father to me. If you tell me this is wise, I might almost believe it. Jon Arryn's eyes softened. I tell you this, he said. The realm is tired. It has bled for this war. It needs to believe there is an ending. If you refuse this challenge, men will say war may yet come. They will fear Rhaegar lurking in every shadow. If you accept it and win, those fears die with him. If you accept it and lose, his mouth tightened, then the realm has at least seen you face your foe openly. It will be less likely to tear itself apart over questions of honor. You speak as if I am already in my grave, Robert said. As if you are writing my bloody epitaph. I speak as your hand, Jon Arryn said. Charged to think of these things when you might not. My counsel is this: accept. Kill him in front of witnesses and end this dragon business. Cersei glanced between them, lips pressed thin. Tywin's expression remained unreadable. Eddard said nothing. He watched his friend's face shift. Anger, pride, uncertainty. That old hunger for battle he had seen so many times when they were young. At last Robert barked a laugh. It was jagged. 7 hells, he said. Why did I think sitting a chair would be easier than swinging a hammer? Fine. I will accept. Let him come. I will break his chest again, and this time I'll take his bloody head to mount on the gates. The realm can sing about that. Cheers erupted from many throats. Lannister men, Stormlanders, some river lords eager for a clear end. Others remained silent, their eyes shadowed. Eddard felt a strange mix of relief and dread. He had hoped for this and feared it. Robert turned back to him. You will ride back with my answer, he said. Take my words. Tell him I accept his foolish challenge. Tell him I will meet him on the field in 1 month's time. Let him lick his wounds and kiss his stolen girl while he can. Soon enough he'll find what it means to face a king. Eddard's jaw tightened. He is a prince. You are a king. When the swords cross, that will not matter much. Good, Robert said. His eyes shone with a fierce, ugly light. I have always preferred simple truths. Go then, Ned. Carry the raven in your own skin. And when this is done, if you are still determined to scowl at me for what others have done in my name, you can do it with a cup in your hand. I will need friends who remember when I was more man than crown. Eddard bowed. As you command, your grace. As he rode from the city again, the weight of the world seemed to ride pillion behind him. But somewhere beneath it all, a thin thread of something like hope pulled taut. The field they chose lay between King's Landing and the Trident, a wide swath of grassland broken only by the occasional stand of trees. No walls, no hills, no rivers, nothing to hide behind. It had seen battles in the long-ago days of conquest, but now its scars were soft and green. On the morning of the duel, 2 small knots of men stood at opposite edges of that field. On one side, Rhaegar Targaryen sat a gray mare, his armor freshly polished. The maesters had done what they could with his ribs. They would never be quite the same, but the pain now was a remembered thing, a dull ache that flared only when he turned too far. Arthur and Gerald sat their horses flanking him, white cloaks a bright slash in the morning light. Lewin Martell was there as well, though he had argued long with himself before agreeing. Oswell had been left to guard Lyanna and the child, along with other men Rhaegar had gathered in the weeks since Eddard's departure. Minor lords, hedge knights, even a former Sellsword captain who claimed to have fought in the disputed lands. Behind them fluttered a banner hastily stitched. red three-headed dragon on black, smaller than the one that had flown at the Trident, but no less proud. On the other side, Robert Baratheon sat his great black destrier, armor dented and scarred from the war but oiled nonetheless. His warhammer rested across his saddle. Jon Arryn rode beside him, face grim. Tywin Lannister had declined to attend. He sent Ser Rhaegar Clegane as witness instead, a looming mass of steel and malice that made even some of Robert's own men shift uneasily. Eddard Stark was there, jaw set, eyes searching the horizon. Ser Barristan Selmy rode with them as well, his white cloak a ghost of loyalties past. The difference in their entourages spoke volumes. Rhaegar's men were few, eclectic. Robert's were many and mostly of the houses that had won the war. But both had kept to the agreed number of witnesses in the actual field. The rest waited at a respectable distance, lords and knights and curious small folk who had followed at their heels, a silent ring at the edge of possible disaster. Between the two groups, a single man stood. The Septon had been chosen for his stoutness of heart and lack of ties. He held a staff and a seven-pointed star on a chain. His voice, when he called them, carried surprisingly far. "Robert of House Baratheon," he cried, "by the grace of the realm, called King of the Undulls and the Rhoynar and the First Men, and Rhaegar of House Targaryen, Prince of Dragonstone, claimant to that same throne. You come here under truce, sworn to settle your quarrel in Sing. Look combat before the eyes of gods and men. Do you so swear?" "I swear," Rhaegar said. His voice was steady. The breeze tugged at the dark hair that had grown longer since his days in the city. "I swear," Robert grunted. His eyes were locked on Rhaegar, hot and bright. "Then come," the Septon said, "and let the gods judge." They rode forward until they faced one another across a stretch of grass. The space seemed small to Rhaegar, narrower than the river's breadth at the Trident, but wider too. There was no water to drown him here, only air and expectation. "Alive after all," Robert said, lips curling. "You look worse for wear, dragon. The river did not treat you kindly." "It was your hammer, not the river," Rhaegar said. "You struck a good blow. Few men could have risen from it. Yet here you sit," Robert spat, "stealing more breath than you deserve." Rhaegar studied him. The war had thickened Robert further. More muscle, more belly, more rage. His eyes glittered with a feverish light that had nothing to do with wine. He wore a stag helm again, though not the antlered one from the Trident, which had been split and ruined. This one was plainer, its crown of tines shorter, as if it had been forged in haste. "You have taken my place," Rhaegar said softly, so only Robert could hear. "You sit where I was meant to sit. You wear a crown sewn by a lion on a throne washed in children's blood. Tell me, does it itch?" Robert's jaw clenched. "You dare speak of blood?" he snarled. "You whose father burned men for sport. You who stole my bride and laughed about it with your harpers. You speak of Eliah's children as if you ever spared them a thought while you were rolling in bed with your northern whore. You did not know Elia," Rhaegar said. The words slid on a strange current, detached. "You did not see her face when I told her what I meant to do. You did not see her forgive me more than I deserved. She is dead because of me, and my son and daughter with her. Their deaths lie on my head, but so do yours." Robert blinked. "Throne. Mine. If I kill you today," Rhaegar said, "I kill the boy you were as well as the man you have become. The boy who laughed by the Ares hearth with Eddard Stark, who dreamed of tourneys instead of thrones. I had a hand in killing that boy when I took Lyanna from your story. Today I finished the work. That is on me. Not Tywin. Not my father. Me." Robert stared at him, chest heaving. For a heartbeat, confusion and something like grief flickered in his eyes. Then he shook it off with a snarl. "You're trying to make me think?" he growled. "That's your trick, isn't it, Prince? All your damn songs and scrolls trying to wrap the world in words. But this isn't a song. It's a fight, and I know how to fight." "Yes," Rhaegar said. "You do." He drew his sword. It felt different in his hand than the one he had borne at the Trident. That blade was lost to the river and the mud. This was a new forging, Valyrian steel still out of reach, but masterwork nonetheless. He had trained with it each day his ribs allowed, under Arthur's unrelenting eye, trying to retrain reflexes that had grown too accustomed to books. Robert hefted his hammer with the ease of a man lifting a lover. Around them, the witnesses took their places at the edges of the invisible circle. Eddard's eyes met Lyanna's where she stood among Rhaegar's small party. She had insisted on coming. She stood with her chin high, Jon in her arms, a nurse at her back. The child gurgled, unaware. The Septon raised his staff. "Begin," he said. Robert charged. He came fast, faster than a man his size had any right to move. The ground shook under his destrier's hooves. Rhaegar urged his own mount aside, not back, angling. The first swing of the hammer whistled past his shoulder, missing by inches. The wind of it slapped his hair across his face. He remembered the Trident. He remembered trying to unhorse the Stormlord, treating the clash as a joust rather than what it truly was, a brawl in a river. He had misread the field then. He would not now. He did not try to meet the hammer head-on. He danced away, let Robert overextend, made him move that heavy armor and all that fury across the grass again and again. He cut where he could, little slices at plate straps, at buckles, at exposed flesh. Death by 1,000 small decisions rather than one grand stroke. Robert roared and swung and chased. Twice he came close to landing a blow hard enough to end it. Once Rhaegar's horse stumbled and almost threw him. He clung with his knees, ribs screaming, and forced them both back into motion. Sweat ran into his eyes. His arms ached. His sword felt heavy. But Robert's breathing grew harsher too. The hammer swings slowed by tiny degrees. The fury in his eyes edged toward desperation. "You run well," Robert panted. "Dragon on a string." "I learned from you," Rhaegar said, and darted in under the next swing, his blade flashing. The point kissed Robert's thigh, just above the knee, where the armor gaped a hair. Blood welled. Robert cursed. "You think a scratch will stop me?" "No," Rhaegar said, "but 5 might, 10, a dozen." He gave the audience a show he realized distantly. Men would be speaking of this duel for generations. Little details would grow in the telling. The glint of sunlight on steel, the sound of hammer on sword. He wondered which version of him would survive in those tales. The dragon prince in rubies who died in a river. The exile who returned. The man who danced around a king on a field of grass. He saw Eddard watching, eyes narrowed, counting. He saw Jon Arryn's lips move. Prayer, perhaps. He saw Rhaegar Clegane's hand twitch on his sword hilt every time Rhaegar closed within reach, as if itching to break the rules. He saw Cersei's face, pale and intent, her fingers digging crescent moons into her palms. He heard Lyanna's sharp intake of breath each time the hammer came too close. Could not last forever. Bodies could not. At some point, one of them would make a mistake that the other could not fail to exploit. It was Robert who faltered first. He lunged in, hammer arcing in a brutal upward swing meant to catch Rhaegar's ribs again. It was a good move, one he had used before to devastating effect. But his footing slipped, just a fraction, on a patch of grass slick with his own blood from earlier cuts. His weight shifted wrong. Rhaegar saw the opening. He stepped in, as he had not dared to before, and drove his sword low, under the hammer's arc, twisting his wrist to angle the blade up. It slid past mail and plate at the gap beneath Robert's arm, where the breastplate met the side. He felt resistance, then the sickening give of flesh. Robert grunted. His eyes went very wide. For a heartbeat, they were close enough to smell each other's sweat. "Damn you," Robert whispered. There was less anger in it than Rhaegar had expected. More sorrow. "And you," Rhaegar said. He yanked the blade free and stepped back. Blood spilled out in a hot wash, spattering the grass. Robert swayed in the saddle. His horse shied. He caught the reins by instinct, hauled himself steady. He could still fight, Rhaegar realized. Men had fought on with such wounds before. He might bleed out anyway, but he could still take Rhaegar with him. All it would take was one last mad charge, one last hammer blow. Their eyes met. In Robert's, Rhaegar saw the calculation. He saw the old hunger for glory and the new awareness of how little it would matter if the realm tore itself apart afterward. He saw, perhaps for the first time, a king instead of only a warrior. Robert laughed. It was a short, ragged sound. "Wouldn't give them the satisfaction," he muttered. "Told Ned once I'd die with a drink in my hand. This isn't that, but it'll do." He dropped the hammer, thudded into the grass. Gasps rippled from the witnesses. Eddard took a half-step forward, then checked himself. Robert swayed again. Rhaegar started toward him, then stopped, uncertain. "Go on, then," Robert said. His voice was strangely calm now, as if they stood once more in some training yard rather than on the edge of a broken kingdom. "Finish it. Otherwise some brave fool will say I yielded and you'll never hear the end of it." "Will you yield?" Rhaegar asked quietly. Robert snorted. "To you." He shook his head. "I yield to no man, but I won't swing again. That will have to be enough for your songs." He grinned suddenly, blood bubbling at the corner of his mouth. "You were right, you know, about the boy. He died somewhere on the Trident. Killed by you and your damned father and everything between. Maybe it's best the song ends here." Rhaegar stepped close. With one swift motion, he brought the sword up and in and across, clean through the neck. He did it himself. That would matter, he knew, in the telling. Robert's head fell to one side, helm clattering, then rolled from the saddle to the grass. His body slumped after, tumbling heavily, sending up a spray of blood and earth. For a heartbeat, there was only the sound of the horse's panicked snort and the distant cry of some bird that had been watching. Then the world exploded. Men shouted. Some surged forward. Others hung back, unsure. Swords flashed. Eddard Stark stepped in front of Rhaegar by instinct, his own blade half-drawn, old habits of friendship and battle taking him before thought. Arthur was at Rhaegar's other side, dawn finally unsheathed and blazing in the sun. Rhaegar Clegane roared and took a step before Ser Barristan's hand clamped on his arm, knuckles white. "Truce!" the old knight bellowed. "By all the gods, the duel is done." "Stand down! King Robert is dead!" someone cried, high and hysterical. "The Dragon Prince cheated," a Stormlander shouted. "He used tricksy spear dancing. That's not fighting, that's dancing." "He killed him clean," Jon Arryn said loudly. His voice cut through the chaos like a bell. "Before witnesses, by agreed terms, by right of arms. The throne is decided." Tywin Lannister was not there to dispute it in person, but his men looked to Ser Kevan, who had ridden in his stead. Kevin's face was gray. He looked from the corpse to Rhaegar to the witnesses and saw, perhaps, how little appetite remained for more war. Eddard lowered his sword slowly. He turned to look at Rhaegar. There was blood on Rhaegar's face, a fine spray across one cheek. His eyes were dark and unreadable. "It is done," he said. It was not triumph in his voice, not sorrow either. Something else. Resignation, perhaps, or acceptance of a burden finally settling where it always claimed it should. Eddard nodded once. "Aye," he said. His gaze drifted past Rhaegar to Lyanna, standing beyond with Jon in her arms. The babe had started crying at the commotion, a thin, outraged wail cutting through men's shouts. Lyanna's eyes met her brother's, then Rhaegar's. "It is only begun," she said. In the weeks and months that followed, songs bloomed like wildflowers across the realm. Some called it the Duel of the Field of Grass. Others named it the Second Trident, though no river ran there. In taverns from the Fingers to Sunspear, minstrels sang of the day the last dragon and the stag met beneath a blue sky and decided the fate of 7 kingdoms. The songs did not agree on everything. In some, Robert fought on with the sword in his guts, swinging until the last breath. In others, Rhaegar took the blow meant for Eddard Stark and in that moment redeemed all sins. In a few, Lyanna herself stepped between them and snatched the crown from midair as it fell from Robert's dying head. Reality, as ever, was duller and sharper both. After the duel, there were days of ugly, necessary work. Dies to burn, oaths to take, ravens to send. Rhaegar rode to King's Landing not as a conqueror, but as a claimant the realm had already seen survive the test most men considered divine judgment. The small folk lined the streets as he passed. Some spat, some wept, some merely watched, faces blank, as they had watched one procession after another these last bloody years. The throne room still stank faintly of smoke and death. The bodies had been cleared, the gore scrubbed from marble, but the ghost of it clung to the air. Rhaegar walked the length of the hall slowly, boots ringing on stone. Lyanna walked a few paces behind, Jon in her arms, Eddard at her side. The Iron Throne loomed at the far end, a jagged silhouette against the light. It seemed smaller than he remembered, as if all of this had taken some metal from it too. He stopped at its foot. Jaime Lannister stood to one side, white cloak immaculate, golden head tilted. "Your Grace," he said, with a little half-bow that managed to be both mocking and sincere. "Ser Jaime," Rhaegar said. His voice carried clearly in the hush. "They call you Kingslayer now, I hear." Jaime's mouth twisted. "They do. You did the realm a service," Rhaegar said. "Whatever your reasons or your father's schemes, my father would have burned the city rather than see it taken. You stopped him." Surprise flickered in Jaime's green eyes, quickly masked. "You're the first Targaryen to say so," he said lightly. "Most of the rest preferred to see it otherwise. Dead princes do not give thanks. Dead princes do no one any good," Rhaegar said. "As you can see, I am attempting a different path." He mounted the steps. Each one felt like a choice. When he reached the top, he did not sit. Instead, he turned outward. "The realm has seen enough of kings sitting while others burn," he said, projecting his voice to the far corners. "Before I take this throne, if I take it, there will be words. Not just mine. Murmurs." Tywin Lannister watched from the shadows near a vaulted pillar, hands folded, face unreadable. Jon Arryn stood in a small cluster of lords near the front, Hoster Tully beside him. Mace Tyrell's doublet strained at the seams as he leaned forward, eyes bright. Doran Martell was not present. His gout kept him in Sunspear, but he had sent a stern-faced emissary with a scarf of orange and red. "Speak if you must," Tywin drawled. "The sword has already spoken." "The sword spoke for me," Rhaegar agreed. "It did not speak for you, Lord Lannister, or for any man in this hall. And it most certainly did not speak for those who cannot stand here at all. Rickard Stark, Brandon Stark, Elia Martell, Rhaenys, Aegon. The men burned in the throne room, the children crushed in their beds. The nameless small folk trampled underhoof on 100 battlefields. Their blood slicks these stones. Their voices are not in this hall. We will give them what we can in their absence. We can give them justice," the Martell emissary said sharply. "You have promised already the head of the man who ordered my kin slain." "I have," Rhaegar said. He looked straight at Tywin. "Lord Tywin Lannister, step forward." Collective inhale. Tywin regarded him for a heartbeat, then moved unhurried, as if attending to a minor household matter. He walked with the confidence of a man who had never had cause to doubt his place. Even here, in this hall where his knights had broken oaths and butchered children, he showed no visible fear. "You send for me like a steward," he said. "Perhaps the river knocked more sense from your head than I realized, Your Grace. You sit an uncertain throne. It would be wise not to push away your strongest supporter." "You are not my strongest supporter," Rhaegar said. "You are a viper coiled at my foot. I might use you as long as you strike outward, but I would never take my eyes off you. Better to deal with you now, when the wound is still open, than later when the poison has gone too deep." Tywin's jaw clenched. That small, subtle sign of anger was more than many men ever saw from him. "You would throw away the wealth of the rock," he said. "The mines, the men, the fear my name inspires in your enemies. For what? For a Dornish girl you barely knew and children you never bothered to visit when you were bedding wolves in towers. Eddard bristled. Lyanna's grip tightened on Jon. The babe, sensing the tension, squirmed and whimpered. For justice, Rhaegar said. A word that has become twisted of late. We used it to excuse murder. We used it to call madness duty. Perhaps it is too small a word for all that has been done. But it is the one we have. He looked to the Martell emissary. Will your prince accept anything less than Tywin Lannister's death for what was done to Elia and her children? No, the man said simply. He will not. Then it is settled, Rhaegar said. You will die, Lord Tywin. There was a collective exhale, like a wind gusting through leaves. Even Jaime's composure cracked. His eyes flared. Tywin himself merely lifted a brow. You forget, he said. I do not kill men with my own hands. Others do it for me. If you execute me, you remove the head, yes. But the body remains. My bannermen will not take kindly to it. They will withhold their swords, their gold. The rock's strength will be turned against you. Can you afford that so soon after taking the throne? I cannot afford you alive, Rhaegar said. Every man in this hall knows it, even those who will not say it. He glanced at Jon Arryn. The Falcon Lord's expression was grave but approving. But I will not drag your family down with you. Your son Ser Jaime will keep his white cloak. Your brother Kevin will inherit the rock. The Lannister line will continue. It is the man who ordered the crime who must pay, not the millions who never touched a sword. Tywin's lips thinned. You are making Mize you do not need, he said. I am executing one I do not need, Rhaegar replied. He nodded to Arthur. The sword of the morning stepped forward. Tywin did not beg. He did not weep. He stood tall as Arthur drew dawn, its pale blade seeming to drink in the hall's light. For Elia of House Martell, Rhaegar said. For Rhaenys, for Aegon, for the nameless children who would have followed, had we let this rot sit in power. Dawn flashed. Tywin's head fell like Robert's had, though without the same spray of blood. Arthur's cut was clean, controlled. The great lord's body crumpled at the base of the throne. For the first time in a long while, the hall seemed to breathe. The Martell emissary bowed deeply. Tears glimmered at the corners of his eyes. Dorne remembers, he said. So does the realm, Rhaegar said quietly. When he finally sat the Iron Throne, it was not with the roaring approval that had greeted Robert. There was no wave of adulation, no chant. Respect, yes. Caution. Hope in some. Fear in others. Wariness in many. He did not expect love. He did not ask for it. What he asked for was work. The first edicts he issued were not grand. They concerned grain levies, reparations to war-torn regions, restrictions on the use of wildfire in the city. He abolished the right of a king to burn men without trial, writing into law what had never truly been written before. He convened a council of lords and maesters to review the crown's debts, inviting men of varied houses, not only those who had supported him, but those who had stood with Robert. He offered Jon Arryn the hand's pin again. The older man hesitated, then accepted, duty warring with whatever grief he bore for the lost stag. He sent ravens to the north, inviting Eddard to bring his lady wife south to witness the turning of the page. Catelyn Tully came, wary but curious. She and Lyanna circled each other at first like cats, prickly and polite, but over days a fragile understanding grew. Both had loved and lost, though in different ways. Both were learning to live in a city of strangers. Lyanna did not become queen. Elaya's memory, and Dorne's pride, would not have borne it even if Elia had lived. But Elia had died, and the realm needed a figurehead as well as a working king. After long, painful debates with Doran Martell's emissaries and Lyanna herself, they settled on a compromise that pleased no one entirely and so perhaps was fair. Lyanna would be acknowledged not as queen, but as prince's lady, a title that had never existed before but now sat in a slightly awkward place between wife and consort. Jon would be named as one of Rhaegar's heirs in equal standing with any children he might yet have by another lawful marriage. their precedence to be decided by a future great council when the time came. "You are making knots for your grandchildren to untangle," Gerald Hightower grumbled. "Better than leaving them a noose," Rhaegar answered. He did wed again, eventually, not out of romance but duty. The match with Dorne was too soured by Elaya's death to salvage. Instead, he turned to the Reach, taking a Tyrell maid to wife, sweet and politically advantageous. Lyanna laughed when he told her, not unkindly. "You will be tangled in flowers and thorns until you choke," she said. "Serve you right." "And you?" he asked. "What tangle would serve you right?" "I have one already," she said, with a glance toward Jon, now a toddling blur of dark hair and endless questions. "That and a horse are plenty." In the north, stories filtered back of Eddard Stark returning to Winterfell with war's dust still in his hair and a woman's hand in his. He married Catelyn as had always been planned, though the circumstances were altered. They named their first son Robb. When Robb and Jon met years later, they regarded each other warily at first, then grinned the same crooked grin at some private joke and were inseparable by week's end. Rhaegar watched them spar one morning in the Red Keep's yard. Two boys, one with Tully red in his hair, the other with Stark dark, both laughing as wooden swords clacked. "They do not know what we have given them," he said to Lyanna. "Good," she replied. "I'd rather they didn't." He found himself at the wall once, years after the duel. He had heard whispers of dead things moving in the snow, of wildlings talking of white shadows in the night. He had promised Lyanna he would not ignore such rumors. The wall rose before him, cold and immense. Men older and harder than he had ever been stood shivering on its windswept top. He listened to their tales. He walked among the silent weirwoods south of it, their red leaves whispering. He felt the old power in the air, the one that had always haunted his dreams. "It is not finished," he said softly, alone in the godswood of Winterfell on his way back south, snow crunching under his boots. "There is more to come." Perhaps in another story he would have tried to drag Jon into it. He would have spoken of prophecy, of chosen ones, of sacrificial fires. In this one, he remembered a woman's voice in a tower, hoarse with anger and childbirth. He thought of his son, not as prince that was promised, but as a boy who liked to climb where he shouldn't and ask questions that made maesters blink. He turned his face south again. "We will meet it when it comes," he murmured to the cold air, "with all our sons and daughters at our sides, not on an altar. This time, we will not burn ourselves to light the way." Years would bring new troubles. They always did. Rivalries would simmer. Lords would grumble. Some would plot. Knots would tighten around the question of succession as Jon grew, and so did his younger half-siblings. Dorne would never entirely forgive, and the Reach would always push for more. Old grudges did not simply vanish because a man swung a sword well on a single day, but for a while, longer than anyone had dared hope, the realm knew relative peace. Fields were sown, ships sailed, children grew to adulthood without seeing a battlefield. In taverns from Lannisport to White Harbor, the songs changed. They still sang of the Trident, of course, of the rubies in the river, of the young prince shining in the sun. But they sang, too, of the field of grass, of the day the dragon and the stag met without an army between them. They sang of a wolf girl who chose her own fate, of a king who executed a lion for the sake of justice, of a boy with dark hair who carried winter and fire in his veins and laughed as he fenced with his cousins. No song is ever entirely true. All bend under the fingers that play them. But in the heart of the Red Keep, in a quiet upper room where the noise of court came only faintly, a man with silver-streaked hair would sometimes sit by the window with a book in his lap and listen to the faint sound of music drifting up from the city below. Rhaegar Targaryen would close his eyes and hear, in those chords, the echo of a hammer in a river, the cry of a babe in a tower, the ring of a sword on armor in a field of grass. He would feel the ache in his ribs and the warmth of a woman's hand on his shoulder and the solid weight of a crown that pinched less now than it once had. He would think, not for the first time, that he had failed in many ways and succeeded in a few that mattered more. "Not quite the song I imagined," he would murmur half to himself. Lyanna, sitting cross-legged on the floor nearby while Jon and Robb and little Rhaenys, no longer a princess played at being wolves and dragons together, would snort. "Songs never are," she would say. "The point is we're still here to complain about them."